This is the most unhinged podcast guest in history.
Police make an arrest after a human torso and foot were found inside a building in the Bronx.
And this guy owed me $5,000 for some drugs that I had gave him. So I robbed him.
If you're up to date with current events, you would probably know that Joe Rogan recently had a podcast guest named Sheldon Johnson, and this man was recently taken into custody on charges of murder. The details of this case are still being collected each passing day, but if you'd like to know all of the details we know currently and how this guy managed to get onto the biggest podcast in the world, then you've come to the right place. I will be discussing all of these details in today's video. Before we get into how this happened, we have to start off by establishing the full timeline of events. To begin with, there is a man named Josh Dubin who is a well-known criminal justice reform advocate. He actually is the head of his own legal consulting firm in New York City called Dubin Research and Consulting Incorporated. Obviously, his goal is to take the oh-so-glorious prison system in place here in the United States that tries to jail innocent black men like O.J. Simpson and Jeffrey Epstein and try to rectify these certain inequities. As a regular critic of the prison system, Joe Rogan has given Josh a platform on his podcast numerous times over the years to share his 25-plus year journey as a civil rights attorney and also share his many contributions to the legal world. He's been a guest on the Joe Rogan Experience 7 times that I can find online, and with a few of these appearances, he's all by himself. However, what I thought was very interesting is when Josh would start a trend of going on Joe's podcast, and alongside him, he would bring somebody who he has personally helped. Many of these people have faced their own injustices from the corruption of the prison system, and Josh allowing them to share this story on the biggest platform in the world and how he's helped improve their situation is nothing short of admirable given the idealist circumstances. However, there was a recent guest that came on with Josh that is different from all the rest of his clients, and that man's name is Sheldon Johnson. Sheldon and Josh made their appearance on Joe's podcast fairly recently on February 1st, 2024. We're going to get into some of what Sheldon discussed on Joe's podcast, but first I want to read to you what he was recently charged with. On the morning of March 8th, Sheldon Johnson was arrested and charged with murder after authorities found a headless torso in his freezer, because where the hell else would you keep a headless torso, if not your freezer? Authorities also found arms, legs, and a severed head, and apparently the victim was a man named Colin Small who lived in the Bronx in New York. Also, according to the neighbors of Colin Small, they heard a lot of yelling coming from his room. They also heard Colin Small pleading for his life, and then shortly thereafter there were multiple gunshots along with a deafening silence. That might sound crazy to you guys, but in the Bronx, that's just Thursday. They also reportedly saw a man repeatedly entering and exiting the premises with many cleaning supplies. I'm sure the guy who did this is the same guy who killed O.J. Simpson's wife. Anyway, now that all of you know what this dude has been charged with and what he's allegedly done, this next part where I show you some of what he said on Joe's podcast is going to be particularly rich. Aside from being an Innocence Project ambassador, Sheldon Johnson also has a history as a former gang member of the Bloods. If you don't know anything about the Bloods, I'll put it this way for you. They commit a lot of fucking crimes. Like a lot of crimes. So many crimes that they actually have multiple documentaries and movies that dramatize the long history of carnage that this organization, to put it mildly, is responsible for. Maybe, just maybe, if you're a former member of a gang that has a body count higher than Lisa Ann, you shouldn't be receiving help with reducing your prison sentence at all. Now that we have a crystal clear understanding of the type of person we're covering here, let's take a look at this clip of him on the Joe Rogan Experience where he talks about the 50-year sentence he received and why. I'm just going to show you a part of this clip where he talks about some pretty insane things.
And when I came home, when I finally located this particular individual, he had his girlfriend with him. And this guy owed me $5,000 for some drugs that I had gave him on consignment. I gave him an eighth of a kilo, which is 125 grams of cocaine. And as far as I was concerned, his jury was, we was even. So I robbed him. I had a bunch of young guys with me, and they robbed her as well. And he got hit in the head with the gun right here on the side of his head, and he got 2 stitches. And they gave me 25 years for that case.
Okay, so there's a lot to unpack here. This dude sold drugs to a guy and didn't get his money in return, so he robbed him at gunpoint, and one of his peers hit him in the temple with a gun. I'm sure Josh Dubin has genuinely done a lot of good work with prison reform, but why on earth would you try to help a dude like this? Anyway, I'll continue the clip. It gets crazier.
This is a guy who I gave something to. He's living an illegal life. I'm living an illegal life. So as far as I was concerned at that time, it was fair game. In hindsight, as I moved on and I became more mature and I began to reevaluate myself, I realized how wrong that was. But that was later on. At this time, I committed the crime and I just kept moving.
So it took him many years to realize that it was wrong of him to be robbing people and that he should be murdering them instead. The only thing anybody should be murdering is the like and subscribe button along with the notifications button if you're finding value in the content you're watching, so you can get all of my videos in your feed. I appreciate you guys watching, and I hope you join the YouTube family by subscribing to the channel. Anyway, after that epiphany that he shouldn't have robbed that one dude, he shares yet another story of a guy he robbed after the fact.
Another guy that I ran into, he also owed me some money. He owed me $7,000, and it kind of went along the same ways. He was selling drugs out of an auto parts store. Reading in between the lines and outside the margins without really going into all of the details, I robbed him because he owed me $7,000. Going back to morals and values and principles, right? In my mind, he was fair game. He's selling drugs, I'm selling drugs, you owe me money. I came to take what you have.
So Sheldon Johnson, the former blood and current drug dealer and armed robber, was concerned with morals and principles. This is so rich. I'm just gonna come out and say it, this Sheldon Johnson guy, this guy was a real jerk. Then apparently he was offered a 23-year sentence for both cases. But then after he declined this and went to trial, the judge ramped up his charge to 50 years in prison, which accounted for 25 years for the first robbery and 25 for the second robbery that he committed. So then the judge says this about him when talking about the case.
And I remember when he said 50 years. He said he went into all of these reasons why he was sentencing me the way that he was sentencing me. And he just called me a menace to society, and he gave me 50 years.
Yeah, I think the judge was right, and you definitely should have served 50 years in prison. This is such a crazy world we live in, where Joe Rogan sat across from a murderer, allegedly of course, who could have been locked in prison if the system was allowed to operate the way it was intended to. Now guys, listen, I don't want to get too political, but maybe sometimes the prison system in America actually works correctly. I acknowledge the fact that there have been plenty of instances where people get wrongfully convicted of crimes they did not commit, and also some people who receive harsh and overly long jail sentences for petty crimes that probably don't need the long sentence. But in cases like this, I think the prison system worked exactly as it was intended to. This dude was initially given 23 years in prison, he denied that and tried to appeal it, and so his sentence was raised to 50 years for crimes that to his own admission he committed. It doesn't get more clear-cut and dry than that. But Josh Dubin fought for this guy's freedom and rehabilitation into society. If this dude stayed in prison as the system had intended, then he would have never been able to walk the streets and commit such a violent and heinous crime. This just makes Josh Dubin look really, really bad. And the fact that he was able to be platformed on the biggest podcast in the world is absolutely crazy. Some of the comments on this video are absolutely hilarious and true. Like this one that says, "Imagine being locked up for being wronged by the system for over 25 years, only to prove that the system was right. Amazing." The judge who gave him 50 years must feel pretty smart right now. "I really believed I was gonna die in prison." Well, you're not wrong, buddy. Seems like a genuinely nice guy. Glad he turned his life around. Anyway, I'm still flabbergasted by the details of this case, and I feel like there's a lot more grim details that will come to the surface as time goes on. Jokes aside, I sincerely hope that the justice system works this time and operates as it's intended to, so that Sheldon Johnson is not able to inflict any more of his supposed morals and principles onto society. I hope you guys enjoyed this video and found it informative. All in all, this was the most unhinged podcast guest in history. Hey everybody, thank you so much for watching the video all the way to the end. I really appreciate it. If you want to help the channel out, make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on post notifications down below, because that's a free way to support the channel, and you're helping the community grow brick by brick, one subscriber at a time, every time one of you guys subscribes. subs. I really want the YouTube family to hit 100,000 subscribers this year, and I think we could do that, so please help me out by subscribing to the channel right now. If you want to support the channel further, you can check out my Patreon page down below, where you get some exclusive benefits, like you get to see recent sets I did at comedy clubs, you get to see every video early before it comes out, you get shoutouts every single video, and you also get to play a direct leading hand in the direction my channel takes. Real quick, I want to give a shout out to Ethan, Jason Murray, Crossblocker, Thomas Gill, Karsten, and also Eduardo Ramos, Celia Ellis, Darren Lester. I appreciate you guys so much for subscribing to the Patreon. Thank you. But yeah, I hope you guys loved the video. Make sure you take care of yourselves, your friends, your families, and your loved ones. I love you, and I will see you in the next video. Take care.